I made you something special, babe. My name is Michael Jennings. I'm 36 years old, and I run a small chemical testing lab in Bozeman, Montana. The mug my wife, Caitlin, handed me that morning didn't smell right. Not burned coffee wrong, chemically wrong. We'd been married for 9 years, met back when she was finishing grad school in nursing, and I was starting my lab out of a rented space on the edge of town. She used to bring me homemade ramen when I stayed up calibrating the chromatograph. She laughed at my dumb acid-based jokes. She made me feel like the smartest guy in the room, even if her family made it clear they didn't agree. Her sister Amanda had been visiting for 3 days. 3 days of snide remarks about my science hobby. 3 days of not-so-subtle hints that Caitlin could have done better. 3 days of Caitlin sitting quietly, sometimes even chuckling, like she agreed. 3 days of me biting my tongue while Amanda turned our home into her personal stage for superiority. The night before, Caitlin and I had argued. Nothing loud, just one of those quiet fights that happen when one person stops defending their spouse and the other stops expecting them to. "You're too sensitive about Amanda's jokes," she said. "And I'm tired of being the punchline in my own house," I replied. We went to bed without saying goodnight, and now here she was, 8 in the morning, standing in the kitchen holding a mug in both hands like an offering. Her smile was too bright, too conciliatory, the kind of smile that says, "Let's move past this without actually changing anything." "My own herbal blend," she said. "It'll help you relax." I took the mug. The liquid inside was a dark amber. The steam carried a scent that turned my stomach. Yes, there were bitter herbs, but underneath that something medicinal. Something that reminded me of the solvent I used to clean lab equipment. Caitlin was watching my face a little too closely. "Smells. Strong," I said. "It is strong," she answered. From the living room, I could hear Amanda on the phone, probably talking to our mother-in-law, most likely complaining about the guest towels or the water pressure, or how I loaded the dishwasher wrong. She had that particular tone, the one she used when she wanted the world to know she was suffering through my inadequacy. I raised the cup to my lips and paused. Something flickered in Caitlin's expression. Anticipation, maybe, or curiosity about what I'd do next. "You're amazing," I said and kissed her on the cheek. But I didn't drink the tea. I built my lab from nothing. 5 years of chemistry classes at community college while working construction during the day. Then 3 more years scraping together enough to lease a rundown industrial unit. I bought equipment piece by piece, some from liquidation sales, some second-hand. I taught myself how to use mass spectrometers and gas chromatographs through YouTube videos and borrowed textbooks. Started with basic soil testing for contractors, just checking for contaminants before new builds. Then came water samples, product testing for small manufacturers. Even law enforcement brought me evidence to analyze now and then. Not glamorous work, but honest, and it demanded precision. Caitlin used to be proud of that. She'd tell her nursing colleagues about how I helped a daycare avoid a lawsuit after I identified bacterial contamination in their water system, or how I helped a farmer prove his well water was being polluted by an upstream factory. She called me my scientist, and it was real pride. But that pride had been fading for 2 years, ever since Amanda moved back to Montana after her divorce. At first it was just holidays, then birthdays, then random weekends. Amanda worked in pharmaceutical sales, leased BMW, designer coats, talked about real science happening at the big corporations. She made my little lab sound like a side project. At first, Caitlin would speak up, remind Amanda that I built everything myself, that my clients trusted me, that independence meant something. Then the defenses grew quieter, then they turned into laughter, then silence. 3 months ago, Caitlin gently suggested that maybe I should consider changing direction. "Maybe look into one of the bigger labs in Seattle," she said. "Better benefits, more stability, and my family might start taking you more seriously." I told her I'd think about it, and I did. I thought about how my grandfather spent 40 years working in someone else's factory and died 6 months after retirement. I thought about the contractors, farmers, and municipal inspectors who called me directly because they trusted my independence. I thought about how satisfying it was to solve problems with my own hands and my own mind. And I thought about the way Caitlin looked at me whenever Amanda was around, like she was embarrassed, like she wished I were someone else. Yesterday morning, before our argument, I overheard Caitlin on the phone with Amanda. They were talking about how stubborn I was being about keeping the lab. Maybe he needs something to help him see things more clearly, Caitlin said. Amanda laughed and said she knew exactly what Caitlin meant. At the time, I thought they were talking about couples counseling. Now, holding that strange-smelling tea, I wondered if they had been talking about something else entirely. Amanda walked into the kitchen, still on her phone, with her signature look of polite irritation, this time complaining that the coffee maker didn't froth milk the way she liked. She set her phone down on the counter and grabbed the mug sitting next to mine. "Finally, something that actually smells decent in this house," she said. I saw Caitlin go pale. "Amanda, wait," she began, but Amanda had already taken a long sip. She paused, made a face, then shrugged and drank again. Weird aftertaste, but whatever, I need caffeine. Caitlin looked at me. I looked back. Neither of us moved to stop Amanda as she finished nearly half the cup. "Michael," Caitlin said softly, "you should drink yours while it's still hot." I lifted my mug, the one Amanda hadn't touched. It smelled like normal chamomile tea with honey. "This one?" I asked. Caitlin started to say no, then caught herself. That's when I understood. 2 mugs, 2 formulas. One was meant for me. The other had just gone to Amanda instead. "I think I'll wait," I said. "Let it cool down a little." Amanda finished the tea and went back to her phone call. Caitlin started furiously scrubbing dishes that were already clean. I sat at the kitchen table and just watched them both. An hour later, Amanda started complaining about stomach cramps. Mild at first, then more intense. She accused Caitlin of using expired milk in something. Caitlin suggested maybe Amanda had overindulged at dinner the night before. Both seemed genuinely puzzled about what could be causing it. I offered to drive Amanda to urgent care. Caitlin said it wasn't necessary, probably just a stomach bug, nothing serious. But by noon, Amanda was vomiting and had severe diarrhea. She looked pale, shaky, and kept demanding someone call a doctor. Caitlin paced the house, wringing her hands, insisting she didn't understand what was happening. But I understood perfectly. While Caitlin helped Amanda to the guest bathroom for the 4th time, I quietly poured the remainder of my tea into a clean sample vial. Then I scrubbed the mug and loaded it into the dishwasher. By evening, Amanda was stable but exhausted. The vomiting had stopped, but she was still weak and dehydrated. Caitlin insisted we take her to the ER. Doctors ran some tests, nothing immediately dangerous. Probably food poisoning, they said, or a 24-hour virus. Amanda spent the night in our guest room, groaning quietly and sipping water. Caitlin slept on the couch to stay close in case Amanda needed anything. I slept alone in our bed, thinking about the sample vial in my briefcase. On Monday morning, I took that sample to my lab. The results came back Tuesday afternoon. Gas chromatography and mass spectrometry don't lie. The tea sample contained chamomile, honey, and a concentrated extract of cassia and gustapoglia. Senna leaf, a powerful laxative that, in high doses, causes severe gastrointestinal distress, dehydration, and temporary incapacitation. Someone had intentionally prepared a cup of tea designed to make the person who drank it violently ill, and that someone was my wife. I sat in my lab office staring at the printout, trying to understand why Caitlin would try to poison me. Yes, we had problems. Yes, she was unhappy with my career path. Her family always looked down on me. But poisoning me. That felt like a massive leap from complaining about job listings. Unless it wasn't about convincing me. Unless it was about something else entirely. That day, I left work early. Caitlin was in the kitchen cooking dinner like nothing had happened. Amanda was finally feeling well enough to eat solid food and had taken over the dining table, dramatically recounting her medical trauma to someone on speakerphone. "How are you feeling?" I asked Caitlin. "Fine," she said. "Worried about Amanda, of course, but I'm okay." "And how was I supposed to feel?" She froze, wooden spoon halfway to the pot. "What do you mean?" "I mean, if I'd been the one who drank that tea instead of Amanda, how would I be feeling right now?" The spoon clattered against the saucepan. Caitlin turned to me, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Not guilt, not fear. Calculation. I don't know what you're talking about. Senna leaf, I said calmly. A concentrated extract, enough to cause 6 to 8 hours of severe symptoms, enough to need medical treatment. Her face went totally blank. I have no idea what that is. It's what was in my tea, the tea you made for me, the tea Amanda drank by mistake. You're being paranoid. I'm being scientific. I tested it. I have the results. Caitlin crossed her arms. You tested what, exactly? The tea I didn't drink, the one you watched me not drink, the one you expected me to finish. We stood there in silence. From the dining room, Amanda's voice continued, complaining about hospital bills and incompetent ER doctors. Even if that were true, Caitlin said finally, which it isn't, why would I do something like that? Because you wanted me out of the way, sick enough to miss work, sick enough to need help, sick enough to depend on you for something. That's insane, is it? Because while I was supposed to be vomiting and helpless, what was your plan? Go through my records, access my laptop, maybe get Amanda to help you sort through my business files. Her expression changed, still denying it, but differently now, like someone who'd been caught in a smaller lie and was doing everything to keep a bigger one from coming out. I would never hurt you. But you'd drug me. I didn't drug anyone. Then explain the Senna. I can't explain something that didn't happen. We stared at each other across the kitchen island. 8 years of marriage, reduced to this. A lab test result and 2 people who no longer trusted each other. I want you to leave. This is my house too. Pack a bag, stay somewhere else, while I figure out what you were really trying to do. You can't throw me out over a paranoid theory. I can ask my wife for space after she tried to poison me. Most people would consider that reasonable. Caitlin grabbed her purse and keys. I'm going to stay with my mother. When you come to your senses, you can call and apologize. She left without packing a single thing, like she'd been planning to leave anyway. Amanda, still weak in the guest room, called out, "Where's Caitlin going?" She had some errands to run, I replied. Amanda accepted that and went back to her phone. I spent the evening alone, wondering what other surprises my wife had been preparing. Wednesday morning, I did something I'd never done before. I searched Caitlin's personal things, her dresser, her closet, her desk in the home office. I felt like a criminal, but I needed to know what had been going on in my own house. In the bottom drawer of her desk, beneath old tax forms and expired warranties, I found a folder labeled Jennings Lab Information. Inside were photocopies of my business license, insurance policies, client contracts, and financial reports. Documents I'd never shared with her. Documents she could have only gotten from the locked cabinet at my lab. There were also printed emails, messages between Caitlin and someone named James Morrison at a company called Trellix Analytics. The subject lines were variations of acquisition opportunity, small lab consolidation. I read every message, twice. James Morrison worked in business development. His company, Trellix Analytics, specialized in acquiring small independent laboratories and integrating them into larger commercial networks. They offered attractive exit packages for lab owners who wanted to step away from the stress of solo operation. Caitlin had been feeding him detailed information about my business. Client lists, revenue figures, equipment inventory, property information. She'd even included interior photos of my lab and copies of my most recent profit and loss statements. In return, James had been coaching her on how to gently encourage me to consider selling. He suggested creating situational pressure to make independence seem increasingly unviable. He recommended getting family members to express concerns about my financial stability. He even gave her talking points about the benefits of working under a larger corporate umbrella. The most recent email was dated last Friday, 3 days before Caitlin handed me that cup of tea. James wrote, "If he remains resistant to logical arguments, you may need to create a situation where he feels vulnerable or overwhelmed. Nothing harmful, obviously, but something that demonstrates how difficult it is to manage everything on his own. Sometimes people need to experience their limits before they accept help." Caitlin replied, "James, I understand. I think I know how to handle this." He responded, "Remember, the goal is for him to contact us voluntarily. If he believes the idea came from him, everyone wins. Your finder's fee will be $25,000 upon completion of the transaction. $25,000. My wife had been working to sabotage my business and manipulate me into selling for a payout. I photographed every single document with my phone. Then I called my attorney, Patricia Young, and booked an emergency consultation that same afternoon. Patricia read through the printed emails and slowly shook her head. This qualifies as corporate espionage, possibly fraud. Definitely grounds for divorce if that's a route you want to pursue. What about the poisoning? I asked. That's harder to prove intent. She could claim it was accidental, that the senna was unintentional, but combined with these emails, it paints a pattern of deliberate harm. What should I do? Document everything, change your passwords and access codes, move all important business files to a secure location, and don't let her back into the house until we sort out the legal exposure. That night, I changed all the locks and reset every password tied to my business accounts. I also called my 3 largest clients and warned them that someone might try to contact them, claiming to represent my lab. I didn't name Caitlin directly, but I made it crystal clear that any discussions of acquisition should go through me, and only me. On Thursday morning, Amanda finally felt well enough to leave. She hugged me at the door and thanked me for taking such good care of her during that food poisoning. She also said she hoped Caitlin and I could work through our communication problems. I smiled and told her I was confident everything would be resolved soon. After Amanda left, I sat in the quiet house and started planning my next steps. Friday morning, I picked up the phone and called James Morrison at Trellix Analytics. Mr. Morrison, this is Michael Jennings. I understand you've expressed interest in acquiring my laboratory. There was a pause. Mr. Jennings, yes, I've been hoping to speak with you. Your wife mentioned you might be open to discussing a potential partnership. She said that, did she? She indicated you were exploring options, maybe looking to reduce the stress of independent ownership. Well, she was right about one thing. Running a small business is stressful, especially when you can't trust the people closest to you. Another pause. I'm sorry to hear that. Business relationships can be complicated. So can personal ones. But I appreciate you calling. I'd be happy to set up a meeting to talk further. I agree. I think it's time we had a direct conversation. Can you meet today? Today? That's a bit sudden. My wife was very clear that time was a factor. Something about showing me my limitations, creating pressure. You know how these things go. The line went completely silent. Mr. Morrison, are you still there? Yes, I'm here. I think there may be some confusion about my conversations with your wife. There's no confusion at all. I read the emails, every single one, including the part about the finder's fee and the strategy of making me feel vulnerable. Mr. Jennings, I believe you may have misunderstood. No, I understood perfectly. You paid my wife to destabilize my business. You coached her on applying psychological pressure. You encouraged her to manipulate me into thinking that selling was my idea. That's not exactly. So now the question is this. Do you want to deal with me directly, or would you rather explain your business development methods to the Washington State Attorney General? Corporate espionage is a serious offense in this state. James cleared his throat. Perhaps it would be best to discuss this in person. I think that would be wise. We agreed to meet at 2 p.m. at a cafe in downtown Bozeman. I spent the morning preparing. I printed out copies of the full email correspondence between Caitlin and James Morrison, as well as the documents proving her theft of confidential business information. I also prepared a written statement outlining the incident with the tea and how it tied directly into the attempted acquisition of my lab. At exactly 2 cars, James Morrison walked into the cafe. He was younger than I expected, maybe 30, wearing an expensive suit and carrying a leather briefcase. He looked nervous. Mr. Jennings, Michael, please, sit. He sat across from me and launched into a rehearsed statement. I want to make it clear that Trellix Analytics operates strictly within the bounds of the law. We acquire businesses through fair negotiation. We do not engage in industrial espionage or promote any illegal behavior. Interesting, I said, because I have documents that suggest otherwise. I slid a folder across the table. James opened it and began reading. His face went a shade paler with every page. These emails are being taken out of context, he said finally. In what context is corporate espionage legal? We never instructed your wife to break the law. You coached her to steal my business records and push me into a vulnerable position. In most states, that qualifies as fraud and conspiracy. James closed the folder. What do you want? I want you to stay away from my business. I want you to cut all contact with my wife. And I want you to understand, if I hear that Trellix is targeting other small labs in this region, I will make sure every relevant authority knows exactly how you operate. And in return, I don't press charges. James stood up. This conversation never happened. On the contrary, this conversation is exactly why nothing else will happen. He left without saying goodbye. On Monday morning, Caitlin returned home. She walked into the kitchen like she had never left, poured herself a cup of coffee, and sat down at the same table where she had tried to poison me 8 days earlier. I think we need to talk, she said. I think we've said enough. I placed the folder of emails between us on the table. Caitlin glanced at it, but didn't touch it. Those are private messages, she said, between you and James Morrison, about selling my company for $25,000. She opened the folder and flipped through the contents. No shock, no shame, just calculation. You went through my personal things. You went through my business files. You photographed my lab. You copied my client contracts. You stole 8 years of work and tried to sell it to strangers. I was trying to help you by poisoning me. I didn't poison anyone. Concentrated senna extract, enough to cause severe gastrointestinal distress. The kind that makes a man sick, dependent, vulnerable, just like James suggested. Caitlin closed the folder. You can't prove intent, but I can prove conspiracy, corporate espionage, theft of business documents, attempted assault with a dangerous substance. No prosecutor will touch that. Maybe, but the state licensing board would be very interested. So would my insurance provider. So would Trellix's corporate compliance team. She stood up. What do you want, Michael? I want you to sign divorce papers. I want you to waive any claim to my business or its assets. And I want you out of this house, permanently. And if I refuse? Then I file charges, civil and criminal. And I make sure every lab owner in Montana knows exactly how Trellix Analytics does business. Caitlin walked to the window and stared out at our backyard. 8 years of marriage, 2 years of sabotage, 10 minutes of consequences. I need time to find a place. You have until Friday. That's not enough. It was enough to plan the destruction of my life. It should be enough to begin building your own. Caitlin moved out on Thursday. She took her clothes, her books, and her car. She left everything else, including the coffee machine that never frothed milk to Amanda's standards. I signed the divorce papers the following month. Caitlin didn't contest a thing. No alimony, no property claims, no ongoing obligations. She wanted the dissolution to be quiet. Through mutual acquaintances, I heard she moved to Seattle and took a job at a major hospital. Corporate benefits, stability, respect from people who had no idea about her side deals. James Morrison later sent me a formal letter stating that Trellix Analytics would not pursue any acquisition efforts in eastern Montana. He also included a check for $25,000 with a note that it represented a refund of consulting fees for services not rendered. I deposited the check and bought myself a new mass spectrometer. 6 months later, my business was stronger than ever. Word had spread about my discretion and ability to handle sensitive matters. Law enforcement agencies started sending me more complex cases. A pharmaceutical company hired me to verify the purity of their raw materials. I was busier than I had ever been. On a quiet Sunday morning in March, I made myself a cup of coffee and sat at my kitchen table. The same table where Caitlin had handed me a cup of poisoned tea and smiled like she was doing me a favor. The same kitchen where I had placed the folder of evidence in front of her. I thought about trust in marriage and the cost of independence. I thought about how close I had come to taking a sip of that tea and how differently things could have ended. But mostly, I thought about how good it felt to wake up in a house where no one was quietly planning to destroy me. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply refusing to be a victim.